Hi, I'm Alana. Welcome to another video. In today's video we're doing a get ready with me for church. So I am actually so excited for what we will be talking about, what I will be talking about in today's video, because the topic of today's video is power versus force. So that's why I would like to begin this morning with two book recommendations. So the first book that I would like to recommend is called Power versus Force by Dr. David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. And the next book that I would like to recommend is called The Map of Consciousness Explained, also by David R. Hawkins, MD, PhD. So what these books are about, basically, David Hawkins and his colleagues I believe they began in the 1970s, they began studying levels of consciousness. And so they used muscle testing and kinesiology to try and measure different levels of consciousness. And over time, they developed a map of consciousness. So this map of consciousness has different levels from the lowest level to the highest level of consciousness. And so they developed this map by basically calibrating different, the level of consciousness of different, you can calibrate the level of consciousness of a statement or of a text, like a book, or of a movie. So kinesiology and muscle testing is a form of kinesiology where you use you need two people, and one of the people is getting tested and the other person does the testing. And so you basically ask them a statement, and it has to be a very specific statement. And if it's true, then you ask them to push their muscle up, push their arm up against your arm. And if the statement is true, then they will go strong. And if it's false, then they will go weak. And it's kind of hard to explain. You should really just read about it yourself. Read Power versus Force for yourself. But so in the map of consciousness, they have all the different levels of consciousness. So at the bottom we have shame and humiliation. So shame and humiliation calibrate around the lowest level of consciousness, around 20. And then as we go up, let me see if I can find the map. So as we go up the map of consciousness, the levels of consciousness get higher. So here we are. See? I don't know if you can see it there, but so we have shame is at the bottom there at 20. And then up we have guilt. So guilt possesses more energy than shame. So guilt is at 30. And then we have apathy at 50, and grief is at 75. Then fear calibrates at 100. See, fear is a lot higher than shame, because at shame, you are just you feel totally consumed by the void, and you don't really have the energy to do anything. Whereas at fear, you're at least empowered to act, to run away, for instance. And then up we have desire. So desire, that's the level that calibrates at the level of addiction. So people who are in addiction calibrate at around 125. So that's, sorry, I don't know if I'm holding it too far away. So that's desire. And then up further we have anger. Like I said, anger calibrates at 150. So anger actually has a lot more energy than things like shame or guilt. But until we get to 200, all actions are counterproductive. So all actions carried out from the lower levels of consciousness are counterproductive. So all actions carried out from a level of consciousness below 200 are counterproductive. So we need to be above 200. So anger is at 150, pride is at 175, and then courage is at 200. So courage is, when you start to feel courage, then you have the energy to begin to act, to begin to change your circumstances. And then we have neutrality at 250, willingness at 310, and then so love is at 500. So reason, we have a reason at 400. Reason, people like Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, these people calibrated around in the 400s at the level of reason. But even reason is in itself limited, because when you get up to, you need to get up to 500 to be at love, and then joy is at 540, peace is at 600, and enlightenment is at 700. So he said in the book that even reason is limiting in itself, because when you are at the higher levels, like if you're around love or even 700, love at 500 or even 700 enlightenment, you're not using reason, because you're not thinking at all, because there are no thoughts, because there is no separation between me and you, between, like, there is no, at level 700, self, the idea of self just dissolves in, because you're just one with everything at those levels. So he said that people who are, you know, running billion-dollar companies or running the world, they actually, like someone at level 700 couldn't do that, because they would just be sitting in an ashram smiling and meditating. So people who are running the world would tend to calibrate around the 400s, 450 mark. So yeah, and so what is the difference between power and force? I'll try and explain it in a few different ways. So power basically is, power stands still and it's sure of itself because it's based in truth, whereas force is always innately unstable because it's not like based in truth. It's based in like a fundamental level of uncertainty, of instability. And so with force you're like pushing against something. So force always creates counterforce, and therefore force is never as powerful as power, obviously. So force always creates counterforce. And so let me use the example of this chair that I'm on right now, this creaky old chair. So I've had this chair for a few years, and Handsome really loves to destroy the chair. Like, he really loves to claw at it and tear it apart, and he's now torn a huge hole in the back of the chair. And for years I would yell at him and I'd be like, Handsome, whenever he started doing it, I would be like, stop destroying our chair. And then one day I was like, you know what, there's already a hole in the chair is already destroyed, I don't care anymore, do whatever you want. And so because I was no longer like pushing against him and no longer like creating that force, which always creates counterforce, he basically completely stopped doing it. Like, he's not even interested in destroying the chair anymore. He used to do it all the time, and now I understand that's because I was, in yelling at him every time he did it, I was creating a force. And so like force always creates counterforce, and so that's why in the lower levels of consciousness you are always going to be working against yourself. All actions carried out in the lower levels of consciousness are always counterproductive because of that reason. So now I realized, or I found, that when I stopped yelling at him for destroying the chair, and I just accepted it and gave in, he stopped doing it. Like, he's not interested in destroying the chair anymore because it doesn't bother me anymore. And so I hope that has been a helpful analogy to understand the difference between force and power. And this was literally the most fascinating book I have read in so long. Yeah, so then they have this one, The Map of Consciousness Explained, and I bought that one too. But in hindsight, I feel like maybe I probably didn't need to buy the second one. I probably did not need to buy The Map of Consciousness explained, because it's basically just the same book, but with question and answer sections at the end of each chapter. And I feel like it wasn't necessary. Like, I feel like Power vs. Force, that book made sense easily enough. So I probably didn't need to buy The Map of Consciousness Explained. So last night I listened to a Soft White Underbelly interview with a man named Bryan Calcott, and he went to prison for, I believe he was charged with conspiracy with intent to distribute cocaine. So he went to prison for 5 years, and he was talking about how, like, his journey in, well, the episode was called Running from My Demons, but he's talking about, like, his journey in recovering from crime, and how after he spent 5 years in prison for intent to distribute cocaine, he tried to, like, have a normal life, and he got into a sales job and he was really good at it, but then they found out that, like, about his case, and so then nobody would work with him, and then he created his own business, which was a business where it was a keto meal prep business. So he delivered, like, meal prep, all the food you need to make your meals, to people. And he was talking about how he did it because his mom had cancer, and he found that, like, the keto diet was really helpful, but that she didn't know how to do it herself. So he established this keto meal plan business, but then he found that no one would work with him. And he was talking about how, like, he was such a good person because he was helping people who had cancer to, like, heal their cancer, but how no one would work with him because he had charges and prison time for intent to distribute cocaine. And I was like, okay. And then he said, so some people, like, think that I'm a bad person because I sell drugs, but this is different because this is food, and, like, people trust me to deliver them healthy, pure, good food. Like, I would never ever contaminate my food, and, like, you know, I'm helping people. And so this is very, very different to the drugs that I used to sell, was basically what he was saying. Like, yes, I was distributing cocaine, but that is very different. He said people who buy cocaine, they know what they're getting into. They're adults and they're buying cocaine knowingly. Whereas food, my keto meal prep business, like, very, very different. I would never, ever mess with these people's food. These people are sacred to me, you know? So that was his reasoning. I didn't like him personally. But that's just my personal opinion. And he seems like a very good talker. So I'll say that. Anyway, that will be all for today. Thank you for getting ready with me for church today. You're beautiful. You're perfect. I love you. God bless you. If you're new, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel.